Hey there, everybody. It's Miss Hubbard here. We are going to be starting reading a new book online, and I thought that I would come on here and record myself reading the book in case anybody wanted to listen while they read along with me. Um, on Google Classroom, in the stream, there is going to be a PDF copy of the text, so you could always pull that up and read along with me, which would be great. I have not read this book yet, and so hopefully that this will be a new experience for all of us. The book that we're going to be reading is called The Skeleton Man, and it's by a guy named Joseph Bruchac. And so I'm just going to jump right in and start reading. So this is The Skeleton Man by Joseph Bruchac. If you see me looking over this way, it's because I have the book on my screen over here, so I'm going to be reading from my screen. But chapter 1, let's start off. It's called Footsteps on the Stair. I'm not sure how to begin this story. For one thing, it's still going on. For another, you should never tell a story unless you're sure how it's going to end. At least that's what my 6th grade teacher, Miss Shaba, said. And I'm not sure at all. I'm not sure that I even know the beginning. I'm not sure if I'm a minor character or the heroine. Heck, I'm not even sure I'll be around to tell the end of it. But I don't think anyone else is going to tell this story. Wait, what was that noise? I listened for the footsteps on the stairs, footsteps much heavier than those of an elderly man should make. But it's quiet, just the usual spooky nighttime creaking of this old house. I don't hear anyone coming now. If I don't survive, maybe they'll all realize I should have been taken seriously and then warn the world. Warn the world. That's pretty melodramatic, isn't it? But that is one of the things that I do well, melodrama. At least, that is what Miss Shaba says. Her name is Maureen Shabas. But Miss Showbiz is what we all call her, because her main motive for living seems to be torturing our class with old Broadway show tunes. She starts every day by singing a few bars of one and then making it the theme for the day. It is so disgustingly awful that we all sort of like it. Imagine someone who loves to imitate Yul Brynner in The King and I, a woman with an afro no less, getting up and singing Shall We Dance in front of a classroom of an appalled adolescence, Miss Showbiz. And she has the nerve to call me melodramatic. But I guess I am. Maybe this whole thing is a product of my overactive imagination. If that turns out to be so, all I can say is who wouldn't have an overactive imagination if they'd heard the kind of stories I used to hear from Mom and Dad? Dad had the best stories. There were ones his auntie told him when he was growing up on the Mohawk Reserve of Aquazine on the Canadian side. One of my favorites was the one about the skeleton monster. He was just a human being at first, a lazy, greedy uncle who hung around the longhouse and let everyone else hunt for him. One day, alone in the lodge, waiting for the others to come home with food, lazy uncle burned his finger really badly in the fire and stuck it in his mouth to cool it. Ooh, he said as he sucked the cooked flesh. This tastes good. Isn't that gross? I love it, at least. I used to love it. It tasted so good, in fact, that he ate all of the flesh off his finger. Ah, he said, this is an easy way to get food, but I'm still hungry. So he cooked another finger and another until he had eaten all of his fingers. Ooh, he said, that was good, but I'm still hungry. So he cooked his toes and ate them. He cooked his feet and ate them. He cooked his legs and ate them. He cooked his right arm and then his left. He kept on until he had cooked his whole body and eaten it. And all that was left was a skeleton. When he moved, his bones rubbed together. Tick, 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 tick. Ah, he said in a voice that was now just a dry whisper. That was good, but I'm still hungry. I hope that my relatives come home soon. And when his relatives came home, one by one, they found that the lodge was dark except for the glow of the cooking fire. They could see a shadowy shape beckoning to them from the other side of the fire. They could hear a sound like this, tick, 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 tick. "Come in, my relatives," Skeleton Man whispered. "I have been waiting for you." One by one, all of his relatives came into the lodge. Skeleton Man caught them and ate them, all but one. She was his niece, and she had been playing in her favorite spot down by the river that flowed through the gorge. She was late coming home because she had seen a rabbit that had fallen into the river. She had rescued it from drowning and warmed it in her arms until it was able to run away. When the little girl came into the lodge, she was surprised at how quiet it was. She should have heard people talking and laughing, but she didn't hear anything. Something was wrong. Slowly, carefully, she approached the door of the lodge. A strange sound came from the shadows within. Tick, 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 tick. Then a dry voice called out to her. "My niece," Skeleton Man whispered. "Come into the lodge. I've been waiting for you." That voice made her skin crawl. "Where are my parents?" she asked. "They are here. They are here inside," the Skeleton Man whispered. "Come in and be with them." "No," the girl said. "I will not come inside." "Ah," the Skeleton Man replied in his dry, thin voice. "That is all right. I will come out for you." Then Lazy Uncle, the Skeleton Man, walked out of the lodge. His dry bones rubbed together as he walked towards the little girl. Tick, 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 tick. The girl began to run, not sure where to go. The Skeleton Man would have caught her and eaten her if it hadn't been for that rabbit she had rescued from the river. It appeared on the path before her. "I will help you because you saved me," said the rabbit. "Follow me." Then the rabbit helped the little girl outwit the Skeleton Man. It even showed her how to bring everyone Skeleton Man had eaten back to life. My mom and dad told me stories like that all the time before they vanished, disappeared, gone, just like that. I was on TV when they disappeared. You probably saw me on Unsolved Mysteries. The news reporter said into her microphone, "Child left alone in house for over 3 days, terrified, existing on cornflakes and canned food." Actually, I went to school on Tuesday and called out for pizza once. Mom had left money on her dresser when they went out that Saturday evening and never returned. I didn't know they hadn't come back until Sunday. I had gone to bed Saturday evening, expecting them to wake me up when they came home, like they always did. But not this time. When I woke up that Sunday morning, I knew something was totally wrong. The house was quiet. Usually my parents were both up way before me. I should have heard Dad in the kitchen banging the pans around. Sunday was always his day for making breakfast, and he made a big thing about it. He'd thaw out a whole quart of blueberries from the freezer, warm up some real maple syrup, but no noise came from the kitchen, no pans rattling, no 70s music playing on the kitchen CD player. My dad is a freak for the Eagles and said it was impossible for him to cook without them. I sat up in bed and held my breath. No rhythmic pounding of my mother running in place in their bedroom down the hall. I looked at the clock, 8:30. By now, Mom should have been halfway through her first set of aerobics. But there were no sounds of thundering sneakers. The only thumping that I could hear was my own heart. Maybe they'd been out so late that they were still sleeping. It had been late when they came back before, because I had drifted off to sleep after midnight, waiting for them. I stood up and went out into the hall. "Mom? Dad?" No answer. It seemed to take me forever to reach the door to their room. It was like I was walking underwater. The door was only half shut. I pushed it open, not sure what I'd see. Maybe they'd jump out at me and tickle me and laugh at their joke. But no one was there. Their bed hadn't been slept in. No one was behind the door or in the closet or anywhere. Not there in the bedroom, not anywhere in the house. And the car was gone from the garage. There was no sign of anyone. It was a cold, gray day, as gray as a long driveway leading down to the road. I didn't go outside to look around. I could tell that it was going to rain soon. I didn't go to a neighbor's house because I couldn't. We live out in the country without any neighbors anywhere near us. It was freaky, that's for sure. But I wasn't scared. Not yet. I just felt in my bones that they'd be back. I went into the living room and turned on the TV, waiting. I have no idea what I watched, even though I sat there for hours. I don't know if it was sports or cartoons or the Home Shopping Network. For some reason, I never turned on the news, even though it might have had something on if they'd been on an accident. But that couldn't be it. Someone would have come to the house to tell me, or there would be a phone call. I looked at the phone, hoping that it would ring, and praying that it wouldn't. Rain began to hammer at the windows at about noon, and I went around the house making sure that they were all shut. I looked out of my bedroom window at Dad's tool shed. Its one window was shut, and I was glad about that. I didn't want to go outside in the cold rain. Finally, at about 2 in the afternoon, I decided that I'd make breakfast. I set the table for the three of us, got out the juice and the syrup and the blueberries and the milk and everything, even napkins that I'd folded so they stood up on the plates. They'd come in, all apologetic, and I would say, "No problem. Look, I even fixed breakfast for us." I can't explain why I thought anyone would want breakfast in the mid-afternoon. It made sense then. I must have been preoccupied with listening for their car to pull in, because I had made the pancakes all wrong so that they were runny, and then I burned them. I laughed some when I was cleaning up the mess I'd made, just knowing that they'd come in right in the middle of it and tease me and tell me that it was all right, and then we'd go out for dinner. But it didn't happen that way. Finally, at about 8 p.m., I ended up eating cornflakes with more milk and what was left of the thawed, soggy blueberries. I got my pillow and some blankets and made a bed for myself on the couch in front of the TV. That way that they'd see me when they came in. They'd be sorry and I'd be upset, but I'd finally forgive them. I also didn't feel like going upstairs all by myself. Besides, Dad would pick me up and carry me to my room like he used to when I was a little girl. I knew I was much too big for that now, but the thought of it, of my dad's strong arms lifting me and my mom patting my face with her hand, calmed me down, and I went off to sleep. When I woke up the next morning on Monday, I found out that I was still alone in the house. I guess I should have called someone, but I didn't. I didn't get dressed for school. I didn't even turn off the TV, which had been going all night. I just sat and looked at the phone. The first time it rang, I jumped a mile. It was from work, from Mom. I told them that she was sick, and I did the same thing when Dad's partner, Al Madoni, called from the bank to see where he was. Mom and I always call him Almond Al. "Shouldn't you be at school, Molly?" Almond Al said. "I should, but I'm sick too," I said. I could hear the long pause at the other end of the line. If I was sick, he was wondering how come I was talking on the phone now. So just like my parents always said, one lie had to lead to another. "I'm better than they are, though," I said in a quick, nervous voice. I mean, I didn't lose my voice like they did, so that's why I'm answering the phone. But it hurts to talk, so I have to hang up now. Bye. Maybe Almond Al was the one who got suspicious and called the police. That night, I went around to all the doors to make sure they were still locked, and I checked the windows. I turned off the TV, and then, because it seemed too quiet, I turned it on again. Not real loud, but just on. I went upstairs and turned on the radio in Mom and Dad's bedroom, and I lay there for a while on top of their bed, listening to classical music. I still wasn't scared, but after a while, I got up and went to my bedroom. I locked my door and I put a chair in front of it. There's this song that Mom taught me once, one that she called a lonesome song, a song you sing when you're all alone and you need a friend. If a friend hears you, they'll sing back to you. I sang that lonesome song very softly to myself. Hey yo, hey ya nay. I kept on singing it. Even though no one answered, it made me feel less alone, and I fell asleep. The next morning was easier. I got up, got dressed, had more cornflakes, brushed my teeth, and caught the school bus at the bottom of our driveway. I didn't say anything to anyone about my mom and dad being gone. They're on a trip, I was telling myself now. Everything is fine. They'll be back. I even remembered to make myself a really official-looking note on my computer saying that I had been sick, and that's why I'd missed school. And I signed it with my mom's name. But maybe the way I worded it wasn't quite right. I know the woman in the office looked at me strangely when I handed it to her with a big smile. Maybe she was the one who made the call. Or maybe it was Miss Shabas. I smiled and laughed so much in class that day that Miss Shabas looked over at me with one eyebrow raised the way she always does when she thinks something is wrong. But I avoid talking with her. If I talked with her about it, then it would mean something was wrong. I was so sure that everything would work out. I never doubted. Not even when the people came to the house the next night and started questioning me. Not when the social services lady and the 2 cops escorted me out. I just kept saying, I have to stay here. They'll be back. I even said to the news people when they showed up, I don't know who called them. Maybe they just sensed it, the way that sharks smell blood and come swarming when something had been wounded. It just looks like I was crying on that TV show. The microphones make your voice sound all weird, like you are hysterical or something. And the lights make your eyes look all wild and scared. They even made mine water so much that you might have thought I was crying. I wasn't. I knew Mom and Dad would be back. I still know they'll be back. But I don't want to talk about that. I just wanted to explain that I was never afraid, not at all. Until later that night when this old guy showed up. Molly, the social services woman said, someone is here for you, one of your relatives. That was a big surprise to me. I didn't know I had any relatives anywhere near. Mom is an orphan, and all Dad's closest relatives are dead. It's a really sad story how his brothers died in a car accident and his sister drowned. And then there was this big fire while Dad was away at school and his parents were in the house. That left only his 2 aunts to raise him, but they were old people and they died before I was born. I think that's the reason why we've never gone up to the reservation. There's nobody close to Dad there anymore, and that makes him too sad. But Dad had said that there were cousins and that they maybe sometime we get to meet them, although they lived all the way out in California. The social services woman led me into another room. A tall, elderly, thin man with stooped shoulders, all dressed in gray, even his shoes, was standing there looking out the window. Here's your niece, the social services lady said in a chirpy voice. He turned around to look down at me with a face that was so thin it looked like bone. He didn't look Indian, though his skin was almost as brown as my dad's. It was as if he dyed himself that color. His eyes were round and unblinking, like the eyes of an owl. He smiled, and I could see how big his teeth were. I don't know him, I said, taking a step backward. Of course not, chirped the lady. He's been out of the country. She smiled at him, and he nodded back at her. They were 2 adults, and I was just a kid. What could I have known about anything? You see, she said, taking the tone that certain grown-ups use when children are idiots, who are the same in their minds. This is such a wonderful coincidence. Your great uncle here moved into our town just 2 weeks ago without even knowing that your father, his own dear nephew, was here. He just happened to see the story on the news and came right over here. You are his flesh and blood, dear. I looked up at him again, and he nodded. There was a little smile on his face. It was as if he knew what I was thinking, as if he knew, I knew, he wasn't who he said he was. But there was nothing that I could do to stop this. I don't know him, I said again. I've never heard of him. And I don't care if he is my uncle. My parents will be back soon. My teacher said that I could stay with her if you're worried about me being home by myself. That was true. Miss Chavez had left only an hour ago. She'd come to the offices where I was being kept. She agreed with me that my parents would be back soon, and she said she had suggested that, just for now, I might like to stay with her, so I wouldn't have to be alone. But social services wouldn't hear of it, not when an actual relative was coming to get me. The lady shook her head. She was losing her patience. Dear, she said, we have checked things very thoroughly. She turned and gestured to the tall stranger she was determined to hand me over to. The expression on their face said that she was sorry to bother him, but they needed to humor me to keep me from making a scene. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a big wallet. It was covered with snakeskin. Here, she said, taking the wallet and holding it to me. I put my hands behind my back. I didn't want to touch it. Ooh, she said in an exasperated voice. Look. She flipped the wallet open, and there was a driver's license with a picture of the man who was saying he was my uncle. The picture looked more human than he did, but it was him. I looked over at him. A horrible thought came to me. Maybe I was the only one who could see him this way. Maybe he looked normal to other people. I snuck a glance at him. He gave me that little nod and a knowing smile again. A shiver went down my back. Dear, look here, the lady said, her impatient finger pointing to the license. There was his name, the same last name as my family's. She flipped the license over to show me another clear plastic pocket with a photo in it. It was the smiling face of my father, the high school graduation photo he'd shown me more than once. She flipped again, and there was a picture of my dad and my mom's wedding. The photos were just the same as those my dad had always carried in his wallet. That wedding photo even seemed to have the same torn corner. She slapped the wallet shut and handed it back. Then it is settled, she said. Until your parents return, you will be in the custody of your great uncle. And that was that. Unlike in a court of law, when grown-ups make a decision about a kid's future, there is no appeal. I was just so worn out from all the attention that I didn't protest. I let him take me to his old spooky house. What was that? Footsteps? Heavy on the stairs? Now I'm afraid. Chapter 2. The knock on the door. It's the seventh night, that I've been in this house. I should be ready for his routine by now, but I'm not. First there is the all too familiar sound of heavy feet thumping up the stairs. Thump, thump, thump. Then there is a long silence while he catches his breath. Thump, 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 in silence. There are exactly 36 stairs, so he does this 11 times. The 12th time is when I hear the wood on the landing creaking. Then comes the worst part, the silence. Because even though he makes noise coming up the stairs, the noise always stops when he reaches the top. Just that first creak when he steps up from the last stair, and then nothing. I imagine that his feet don't really move. He just glides half an inch above the rug, like Dracula in the movies. I know that can't be what happens. I know I'm just scaring myself, and that's all. It is all the thickness of the rug in the hallway that cushions his steps so that I won't hear them. Sorry, guys. But even so, I find myself getting up from the bed to stand in the middle of the room, staring at the chair I have in front of the door, and I'm thinking, maybe, just maybe, he won't come to my door tonight. Maybe he'll just go down the hall and into his own room and hang by his toes from the rafters or whatever he does. Maybe he'll just leave me in peace. As always, I'm holding my breath and I'm listening like a deer does when it catches the scent of a mountain lion. And then the wind changes so that I can't smell it anymore. But the deer knows the lion is out there somewhere. Maybe moving away, maybe getting closer, maybe. Whack, whack! The crack of his bony knuckles against the thick wood of the door makes me jump a mile, but I don't scream like I did the first night he did this after I was brought here. You all right? He says. His voice isn't all that scary, even though it's muffled by the door and sounds as distant as the voice of a memory or a ghost. I lean back away from the door, trying to make my voice sound as far away from it as possible. I'm okay. I'm in bed. I'm going to sleep, I say. Then I wait. Snick. That's it. It's the sound of the lock on the outside. Like every other night, he's locked me in. The first night, it scared me, but now it makes me breathe a sigh of relief. I count out under my breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I hear it. The sound of his feet going back down the stairs. And unless he comes floating down the halls at midnight, or maybe flying outside to peer into my windows, that's it for the night. I can try to go to sleep now. I'm locked in and, I guess, safe. And like the other nights before this, I will try not to think about what it is that I am locked in against. I'll try not to think about why there are bars on my windows. I look around the room. There's not much to see. There's the 4-poster bed, the bedside stand, and a table by the window, which is covered with thick purple curtains. The walls are bare, though they are square and rectangular-shaped places where the wood isn't quite so dark. I guess there used to be pictures hanging there. There's no closet, just one of those old stand-up wardrobes. It has only 6 coat hangers in it, but my stuff is still in the suitcase and the cardboard box that I brought with me. I'm not planning on staying here, so I don't want to unpack. All the furniture in the room seems to be pretty old, all made of dark wood. The rug on the floor is new, and it's cream-colored. It doesn't really go with everything else in the room, but at least it means that things aren't so dark in here. I'm grateful for that, because the only light in here is the one on the nightstand, and it's got a 40-watt bulb in it. There's also a light in the bathroom, which is attached to the room. I always leave the bathroom door open with the light turned on. I walk over to the window. Bad idea, a voice is saying to me, but I'm doing it anyway. Don't look outside, but I can't help myself. I reach for the curtain, feel the heavy fabric in my hand, pull it back. The whole world explodes in a great burst of light and sound. Chapter 3. The Dream. Don't scream. It was only thunder and lightning, a rumble that shook the whole building as if it were a dollhouse rocked by a giant's heavy foot thudding down next to it. When there was lightning, Mom always said it was a flashbulb of the Creator taking pictures with a giant camera. Dad always said thunder is the rumbling steps of the Hinos, the thunder beings who live in the sky. They're good guys who throw down lightning like spears to destroy monsters. But this time, at least, their lightning spears seemed to have missed. In the moment of absolute brightness outside, my eyes took their own quick picture, one that made me yank the curtains back in place and get into bed with the covers over my head. What I had seen in the flash of lightning, down there on the lawn, his face, shaded by a wide-brimmed hat, was a man, a tall man, skinny as a skeleton. He was standing at the door of an old shed. It was my uncle. My mind is going a million miles a minute now. Why was he there? What is he doing? Am I just being paranoid, or am I really in some kind of danger? My mind keeps going back to that shed, too. It's a lot older and bigger than the little plywood one Dad had in the back of our house. It doesn't have any windows in it like my dad's shed. Just one heavy door with a new padlock on it. What was my uncle going to do in that shed in the middle of the night? I can't find an answer. So I turn it all off by thinking of Miss Showbiz singing. I think of her singing that song from that musical about Annie, another orphan. assuming I might be one, which I know I'm really not. Tomorrow, tomorrow. And as I pull my thoughts and fears into imagining her singing, I fall asleep and I dream. It's like some of the dreams I've had before. I know I am dreaming, but I can't wake up. It is what my dad calls an aware dream. That is a dream where you know that you are a dreamer, and if you are alert enough, you'll get some help from your dream. Someone or something will guide you and give you a message. But I am too busy running to look for a guide. Whatever is chasing me is getting closer, and I can feel its hot breath on the back of my neck, and I know its bony hands are about to grab me. Then the dream changes. I am in a cave. I live in that cave, and I'm not alone there. Someone is sitting in the corner of the cave, his face turned away from me. Hold out your arm, child, he says in a rough voice. I hold my arm out toward him, and he rushes back to feel it without looking around. His long, dry fingers squeeze my forearm. Thin as a stick, he growls. Go into the forest and check your snares. You must eat more, my niece. Eat and grow fat. In an eye blink, I'm not in the cave, but in the forest. I'm dressed in deerskin, checking the snares I've placed on the trails. I'm worried because I haven't caught anything. My uncle will be angry. Then I see motion in the bush. Something is struggling at the side of the path. It's a rabbit, its hind foot caught in one of my snares. I lift my stick to hit it, but the rabbit looks at me and speaks. Little sister, the rabbit says, spare my life, and I will help you save your own life. I put down my stick and loosen the cord from the rabbit's foot. It doesn't run away when it is free. Instead, it looks me in the eye and speaks again. Little sister, the rabbit says, thank you for sparing me. Now I will tell you what you must know. The one you think is your uncle is not human. Chapter 4. Dark Cedars. I can still hear the rabbit's voice when I open my eyes. I look at the clock next to my bed. It is morning. Time to get ready for school. I rummage through my suitcase and the cardboard box and I find what I need. I don't feel like putting my clothes into the creepy wardrobe. When I was little, my mom read me that book about the wardrobe and the lion and the witch. I wished then that I had a magic wardrobe that I could crawl into and end up in some strange land. Now that I really am in a strange land, all I want to do is crawl back to home. But if there was some kind of magic door in that wardrobe, it'd probably take me to someplace even worse than this. I take my toothbrush and go into the bathroom. The only good thing about this room is that it has a bathroom connected to it. It means I don't have to go out into the hall or down the stairs yet and see him. There's a bathroom built in because the former owners tried to run a bed and breakfast. There's actually an old sign leaning on its side against the house, Dark Cedars, Bed and Breakfast. The name alone is enough to scare people away from it. But I think it was probably just didn't work out because this place is too far from the center of town, even though it is near Three Falls Gorge, which is the town's main place of scenic beauty, as our Chamber of Commerce puts it. When my uncle got this place, he took down the sign. While I'm in the bathroom, I look at myself in the small, smoky mirror hanging over the sink. I think I have the kind of face that only a mother could love, but both my parents tell me I'm wrong. They think thick eyebrows that almost meet in the middle and ink black hair that grows so thick I need hedge trimmers to trim it are positive assets. There's so much that you can do with that hair, my mother says. I get it cut short and dyed blonde. My nose is okay, not bumpy or too short or too long, but my lips are too thick. My cheeks look as if they have apples stuffed in them, and when I smile, my teeth are straight, but there is this gap in between my inserts on top. Braces will do wonders for you, dear. As if I think, I can't wait until I'm old enough to get a real makeover like they have sometimes on the shopping channel. Still, though, I'm not thrilled with how I look. I don't hate my looks. I can just see lots of room for improvement. And I know that there are people must like my face at least a little, because whenever I smile at someone, they almost always smile back. Except for my uncle. I tried smiling at him yesterday. He just studied my face like a scientist looking at some strange new bug until my smile crawled away and died. I won't try that again. I sigh and lift up my chin. At least I don't look like a terrified victim in some slasher movie. I just look like a kid about to catch the bus. I leave the bathroom and try the door. It's not locked from the outside anymore. It never is by this time. I peek outside carefully, my backpack with a large, empty plastic container in it over my shoulder. No sign of anyone up or down the hall. As soon as I start down the creaky stairs, he hears me. "Come down to breakfast," he whispers up the stairs. He's standing at the bottom, half hidden by the old coat rack. He turns and walks away. He doesn't like me to see his face in the morning, or ever, for that matter. I go into the sunroom. It looks like it used to be a screened porch once. It has a floor of cold stone tiles and is connected to the back of the house. Its 4 big windows and sliding glass door are probably meant to let in sun or give you a view of the garden. But there is no sun today, and there hasn't been a garden out there for a while. The places where flowers once grew are overgrown with needles and burdock and a few small sumac trees. Their leaves all red now, and that there's been a frost. Although there's room in the sunroom for several tables, there's just the one. It's a glass-topped table with rusty blue metal legs. The 2 chairs are made of that same rusty blue metal with curl EQ designs. The table is set for one. As always, he's already eaten. At least, that's what he says. I've never seen evidence of his breakfast. I see his back as he goes out the sunroom door. I'm never allowed to go out that way towards the big shed in the backyard with heavy-duty hinges on the thick, bolted doors. His tool room, he says. I wonder again what he was doing out there last night. "Eat your breakfast," he calls back without turning his head. "You're looking thin." Then he's gone, and I take my first real breath of the day. The food on the table looks good. I'm hungry. Grapefruit, cereal, toast with butter and jam. I put my backpack under the table between my knees. I take the lid off the plastic container in the backpack and pretend to eat. But each spoonful of cereal, each slice of toast, each piece of fruit goes into the plastic box. I snap the lid onto it and close the backpack. Then I pretend to wipe my lips with a paper napkin, ball it up, and put it on the now empty plate. I'm just in time because just as he's done every other day, he sticks his head out of the door of the shed to see if I've eaten my food. "Done," I call out in a cheery voice. Then I stand up and walk to the front door, trying to be as calm as possible, hoping that it will not be locked. It isn't, and I escape down the walk to the corner. The school bus will arrive within 5 minutes. Time enough to dump the food down the storm drain at the curb edge. Let the rats deal with it. Super paranoid. That is what you're saying now. Melodramatic. But I'm determined not to eat the food that he gives me. I think he puts something into it. When I first got here, I ate what he put in front of me automatically. I started to have a headache, and my heart was racing. And I felt some kind of zombie. Felt like some kind of zombie. When I went to bed that night, I just conked out. I didn't even dream. The next day, I started my Tupperware routine. If I keep eating that food, I'd probably be walking with my arms held out in front of me saying, "Yes, master," in a hollow voice whenever he spoke to me. When the bus comes, I take the first seat. Other kids are sitting with friends, but I stay by myself. This isn't the bus I used to take. No one in my class is on it. The people are still checking me out. I haven't been in a hurry to be all bright and cheery with my new busmates either. When the bus stops in front of the school, though, I have to start smiling. This is my place of refuge. I'm safe here. Other kids might groan when they walk through the big front doors, but I breathe a sigh of relief. It's all so routine and boring here. I love it. Although, when Laura Lou, who is my second best friend, waves to me from her locker, I pretend not to see her and just go straight to class. I know she wants to talk to me about Greg Iverson and how cute he is, and do I think he likes her, and I just can't bear it. For some reason, I just can't think of anything to say to other kids right now, and all this stuff that used to interest me seems kind of unreal. In our class, it is Don Quixote Day. At least it is for Miss Showbiz. We're all groaning by the time she finishes belting out her melody from Man a la Mancha. I'm groaning the loudest of all because it just makes me feel so safe, so normal. I feel so great that when Miss Shabbos tells us to open our workbooks, I burst out in laughter. That it is so loud and inappropriate that everyone, including Miss Shabbos, looks at me. Maureen Viola, who is my best friend and who sits 2 seats away, looks at me and mouths the words, "What is wrong with you?" All of a sudden, I feel as if I'm about to burst into tears. I have to put my head down on my desk. What is wrong with me? I'm not being tortured or anything. My uncle was kind enough to take me in. He's just a little strange. Maybe I'm the truly strange one with my worries about being drugged and my blockading my door at night and imagining what might be happening in that shed. Too much imagination. That's me. Miss Shabbos has a little talk with me that afternoon. She asked me to wait behind when the rest of the class is leaving for gym. She's worried about my behavior. Is everything all right? She pauses. At home? What home? That is what I want to say. I want to scream and cry and have her hold me in her arms while I sob against her shoulder. But what good would that do? So I give her my pretend sunny smile. Everything is fine, I say, really fine. But Miss Shabbos doesn't smile back. Really? She says in a soft voice. Then she looks beyond that smile, right into my eyes as if she can see my thoughts. It's not the way my uncle does it, not like someone stealing a part of me. It's not even like an adult looking at a kid who's being unreasonable. It's the way a true friend looks at you when they say they want to help and they really mean it. No, I whisper, it's not. And then I tell her. I don't tell her everything because now that I'm in school, my fears seem a little foolish. But I don't want her to think I'm being melodramatic. But I tell her how I feel, how weird it is in my uncle's house, how I really, really don't want to be there. She doesn't interrupt or ask questions. She just listens, nodding every now and then. When I'm done, I feel lighter, as if I'm no longer carrying a 10-ton truck on my shoulders. Miss Shabbos lightly places her hand on my shoulders. She doesn't say I'm being foolish or that I should grow up. Sweetheart, she says, thank you for telling me. She turns slightly to write something on a card that she hands to me. Here's my home phone and my cell phone. Call me anytime, okay? We'll keep an eye on this together, right? Right, I say. And for the rest of the day in school, things almost do seem right. But then I take one more deep breath and the school day is over. That's bad. The only good thing is that it's Wednesday. That means I get to come back to school tomorrow and the next day before the weekend comes, which most kids love because it means we won't have to go to school for 2 days, 2 whole days. I walk home because it takes longer than the bus. I stop at a fast food place to eat enough to kill my appetite. I don't have much money left, but I don't know what I'll do when it runs out. But I try not to worry about that now. There are other more pressing concerns. Finally, it's getting dark. Can't avoid it any longer. I'm headed back to the house of doom. Chapter 5. Eat and Grow Fat. You may be asking yourself what life is like for me inside that house. Are there spider webs everywhere, bats and centipedes and mold on the walls? Are there chains clanking down in the cellar and ghostly moans coming from the attic? No. Actually, aside from being dark and set back from the road, it isn't really all that spooky of a place to look at. It's 100 years old, but there are older places in town, and the house is full of modern appliances in the kitchen and the living room. Dishwasher, microwave, a television with a cable hookup. My uncle even has a personal computer. I saw it through the open door of his study once. He spends a lot of time in that room. I imagine he must be surfing the net, visiting all the weirdest websites, probably. What makes the house strange is the way it feels when you get inside of it. I saw an old movie once where someone walks into a room and then the door disappears and the walls start moving in. It's something like that. And I always feel as if someone or something is looking at me. But when I turn around, there's nothing there. Then there's the way my uncle acts. Like when you'd expect him to be waiting for me, his niece, to come home and to ask me how my day went. He's not. He's not there. There's just a note on the front door, not handwritten, but out of his laser printer. Back later, it reads, dinner in the fridge. He's left food for me in the refrigerator for the last 2 nights as well. The food I'm supposed to eat is on a plate on the top shelf, ready to pop in the microwave. Anyhow, it makes it easier for me. I flip on the garbage disposal and spoon the lonesome stuff, a huge plate of spaghetti with meatballs, down the sink drain. If I eat everything he gave me, even if it wasn't full of drugs, I'd get as fat as a butterball turkey. I could go into the living room and watch TV, or one of the videos from the library of movies he has next to the VCR. There's a lot of stuff that some people think kids like to watch, mostly Disney movies and cartoons, but I don't want to. It's the thought of having him walk in while I'm watching something, or even worse, of him watching me without me knowing it. I've got homework and books to read in my backpack. I'm seeing more of the school library now than I ever did when my parents turned up missing. Before I go upstairs, I look out the kitchen window to see that the light is on in front of his shed. That either means he's out there or he forgot to turn it off. No way am I going out there to find out which it is. I put the chair in front of my door and then I take a quick bath, put on my PJs and my favorite pink robe, which I have worn just about every night for a year now. I move the bedside lamp closer so I can get the most out of its feeble light, lie down on my stomach, and breeze through my homework. Even the math problems are really no problem at all. Then I pull out one of the books I've borrowed. It's one that Miss Chavez once said I just had to read because it can really identify with heroin, and it takes you somewhere else, which is where I want to be, for sure. It turns out that she was right. The book truly does take my mind off things. Before I know it, I've read a dozen chapters. I feel like I'm on a sailing ship with the heroine, until I start wondering what Charlotte Doyle would do if she switched places with me. And I realize that I don't know what she would do, any more than I know what I should do. I put a bookmark in to keep my place, lean back on my pillow, and close my eyes. As always, at least since I've been here, I don't turn out the light. I just want to rest my eyes. I don't want to go to sleep. But I do. And instantly I am there in that same dream. I'm back in the cave, the body of a partridge warm and limp in my hands. I'm holding it out to my uncle as he crouches in his corner. Without looking over his shoulder, he reaches an arm back. I see for the first time that his fingers are long and hairy, and his fingernails are thick and sharp, more like claws. He grabs the dead bird so hard that I hear its bones crack. I thought it would be a rabbit, he growls. Did you catch a rabbit? No, I say, this is all. Then he begins to eat. I don't see him eat it, but I hear his teeth crunching through feathers and flesh and bones. He eats it all, growling as he swallows. Then he reaches his arm back again. I stare at his fingers. A few small feathers from the partridge are stuck in them, and the nails are red with blood. Hold out your arm, child, he says. I don't give him my arm. Instead, I hold out a stick the size of my wrist. His groping hand closes about it. Arg, he growls, even thinner and harder than before. No flesh at all, only bone. You must eat more, my niece. Eat and grow fat for me. I sit up. I'm awake. I say that aloud. I'm awake. It was all a dream. But then I look around me and I see this room, as bare and cold as the chamber of a cave, and then the snick, snick, snick of the locks. No, it wasn't a dream. Chapter 6. No pictures. There are no photos at all in this house. No pictures of any kind, no paintings, not even any mirrors, aside from that small, cloudy one in my bathroom. Even that was not up on the wall at first. I found it tucked behind the wardrobe and hung it up in the bathroom. Whenever I leave each day, I take it off the bathroom wall and carefully put it in its original hiding place. I just have this feeling that if I don't do that, it will be gone when I come back. There is nothing else in this house to show his face or anyone else's. When he picked me up, he smiled and I laughed and talked like a concerned adult. It must have been an effort for him. His face was drawn and thin, angular, with high cheekbones and a chin that jutted out. A high forehead with only a fringe of hair around his ears. But he looked human then. As soon as he got me into the car, he started to change. I remember him putting on some sunglasses and pulling his big hat down so that his face was concealed from me and from other drivers. I caught a glimpse of the side of his face every now and then, but it seemed as if the flesh was melting off his bones. At the time, I figured the light was playing tricks on me, but now I'm not so sure. Ever since that day, he's been careful not to show me his face at all. He always keeps his back to me. And his hands. He kept them in his pockets, hidden from the social service people. But I could see them as they held the wheel. They were white, pale, pale white, and the skin on them was so thin that I thought I could see through to the bones. And the fingernails were thick and long and sharp like claws. He must have seen me looking because he slipped on a pair of leather gloves at the next stoplight. Then I turned away to watch the trees and telephone poles and the houses whizzing past, being left behind us as we went down that road towards someplace I never wanted to go. He didn't speak that much that day. He just opened the car door when we got to the house. Get out, he whispered. I got out. Go in, he said. I went in. Eat. I ate the plate of food he put in front of me while he stood behind me and watched until I was done. Your room is upstairs, he said. I went up to it with my box and my suitcase, and he shut the door behind me and locked it. I remember wondering that night if the door would ever be unlocked again. I also remember not caring whether I lived or died. I missed my parents so much. And then I remember feeling zombie-like and conking out. I still miss them, but I can't believe that they're gone forever. Dad always told me that being a dreamer meant that I had a special kind of gift like our old people had long ago. If they really were never going to come back, I'd know somehow through my dreams. But I hadn't had that kind of dream. Instead, I just have this feeling that they're out there somewhere and that they'll be back. And when they come back, I'll be there and they'll hug me and explain why they were gone and things will be all right again. I do care whether I live or die. It is the middle of the night. It is still Wednesday night, a night that just seems to not want to end, that just keeps creeping along. But my mind is moving like a runaway freight train. Run away. That's exactly what I feel like doing. But run away where? First of all, I've got almost no money, and without it, I wouldn't get far. He'd find me and bring me back right here. But that is not the only reason I haven't run away. I have this feeling that if I'm ever going to see my mother and father again, I need to be here. That somehow my uncle is involved in their disappearance, even though he didn't show up until after they were gone. Trust your dreams. Both my parents said that. That's our old way, our Mohawk way. The way of our ancestors. Trust the little voice that speaks to you. That is your heart speaking. But when those feelings, those dreams, those voices are so confusing, what do you do then? Help, I whisper, help. I'm not sure who I'm talking to when I say that, but I hope they're listening. Chapter 7, The Counselor. When the morning comes, I haven't dreamed again. I haven't slept. I've been thinking about what I can do, and I've made up my mind. I've got a plan at last. It's a simple one, but simple ones are probably the best. It's also the only thing I could think to do. At school, you're always hearing about kids with problems, and there are people called counselors whose job is supposed to be to help those kids who have them. It seems to me that most kids never actually see them. At our school, at least, the counselor is kept busy by kids who are always in trouble or getting into trouble. Her name is Mrs. Rudder. Until you are frothing at the mouth or something, it just isn't easy to get into her. As soon as I walk into the classroom, I go right up to Miss Shabas. She doesn't do the adult thing of seeming to listen while not really hearing you, because she thinks she already has the answer. She listens so well that even gets to sing whatever show tune she's picked out that morning. It's gotten worse for me, I tell her. It's driving me crazy. Every night when I hear him lock me into my room, I think I'm going to scream. Miss Shabas sits up straighter at that. He locks you in? You didn't tell me that before. As soon as class goes out to rec, she takes me straight to the counselor's office. The door is partially open. I've walked by that door a million times and never gone in before. Miss Shabas pushes it open the rest of the way and pulls me in with her. One whole wall to the left of the desk is taken up by pigeonholes. Not that kind that you put your mail in, but smaller. Every one has the name of a kid written under it, and in every pigeonhole is a little pill bottle, Ritalin and stuff like that. The kids who need meds have to take their daily pill in Mrs. Rudder's office. There's a water cooler and paper cups, lots of them. On the other wall, there are posters about not smoking and not taking drugs. I guess the two walls help balance each other out. Can I help you? Says a voice from behind us that sounds like the person mostly wants to help us leave. Sorry. We turn around and Mrs. Rudders is standing there. She's not very tall, but she has this way of looking at people that makes them feel as if they're being shrunk down under a microscope. Miss Shabas, though, refuses to be diminished. Molly needs to talk to someone. I can make an appointment for, Mrs. Rudder says, stepping past us to her desk and starting to look at our appointment book. Now, Mrs. Shabas says. I'm very busy, Mrs. Rudder replies. I'm sure this child is afraid, Miss Shabas says. Look at her eyes. She will not take no for an answer. The next thing I know, I'm sitting in the chair and Mrs. Rudders is leaning over her desk, asking me questions and taking notes while Miss Shabas listens. At first, I can't make any headway. I'm telling the truth, but I feel like I'm not giving the right answers to the questions I am asked in a calm, matter-of-fact way. Has he ever touched you in a bad way? No. Miss Rudder nods. So, he's never hit you? No. Has he ever threatened you? Not really. Aha, Miss Rudder says. She looks over at Miss Chavez and shakes her head. I can tell that she thinks I'm wasting her time. She's no longer sitting, but standing up in a way that makes me feel as if I'll be standing up soon on my way out of her door. What has he done that makes you afraid? I know what I want to say. I want to say that I see him looking at me out of the corner of his eye in a way that makes chills go down my back. Even when I'm walking down the hall and going in my room, I feel like I'm still being looked at. It is as if eyes are watching me whenever I go into his house. I want to tell her that whenever he comes into a room, the air gets colder. Whenever I know he's thinking about me, I have that feeling like someone is walking over my grave. I want to say that he's not really a human being. He's something else. I don't know what. He's fattening me up. But if I say that, they'll suspect I'm nuts. I want to tell them about my dreams, but I know that if I tell Mrs. Rudder my dreams are warning me about the danger I'm in, she'll move from mere suspicion to absolute certainty that I'm lying. Instead, I say the one thing that does get her attention. He locks me in my room at night. Mrs. Rudder sits back down. She looks right at me over her desk, her hands clutched together. Every night? Every night. Can you come out if you ask? I don't think so. More things are said, but that was a big one. I see Mrs. Chavez nodding to me. Mrs. Rudder has listened. She'll do something. But not much. That afternoon, Mrs. Rudder and a man who was introduced to me as Mr. Wintergreen from Child Welfare escorted me to the house. Miss Chavez wanted to come along, but Mrs. Rudder told her that it wouldn't be following proper procedure. He's waiting because they've called him on the phone an hour before we get there. Plenty of time for him to get ready. He's wearing his hat and a human face again, and he smiles at them. They don't seem to notice that he doesn't offer to shake hands, and he keeps his hands in his pockets of his sweater. Your niece is very upset, Mrs. Rudder says to him. I understand, he says. She has a lot to deal with. They follow him upstairs, and he shows them the door to my room. There is no lock on the outside of the door. Never was. And no sign of screw holes that would be there if the lock had been removed. The only lock is on the inside. See, there's a release for the lock on the inside of the door, he tells them. Her side of the door. She can get out anytime she wants. She's a very imaginative child, he adds. I can't say anything. How can I say that he had time enough to change the door frame or the door? It wouldn't make any difference no matter what I said. They believe him, not me. I'm the melodramatic one. He's just a kindly older man who's taken in a difficult young relative. They stand up. They're going to go and leave me with him. Mrs. Rudder leans over and places a hand on my shoulder. Molly, dear, she says, if you are still having these anxiety attacks, I can fit you in my calendar next week. She looks up at my uncle and smiles. Thank you for your time. I hold my hand up as they walk toward the door, as if to stop them. I want to scream, but I can't. They think I'm waving, and they wave back to me as they go through the door, as it closes behind them, as my uncle goes over to the door and locks it. As he turns, without looking at me, I wonder what he's going to say, what he's going to do. But he doesn't say anything about it. It's as if he has no anger, no real emotions at all. Your dinner is in the refrigerator, is all he says. Then he goes upstairs. You can hear the rearing of an electric screwdriver. I don't even have to guess what he's doing. After a while, he comes down and walks out the back door to his work shed. That night, when I am in my room and my door is closed, I hear his feet coming up the stairs. Then, after that moment of heart-stopping silence, there is the familiar sound, snick, as he locks my door from the outside. So that's chapter 7, and this is where we're going to end for this week. We're only going to be reading the first 7 chapters. Hopefully you guys enjoyed reading along with me. It seems really, really interesting so far. Lots are going on and lots of questions that need to be answered, right? So I'll make another video for the next set of chapters we'll read for next week, but this is all we have for this week. Make sure to check Google Classroom and the stream for the rest of the assignments that go along with the reading here. But other than that, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you're excited to read this book with us, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.